Strike it up! Amen!
Chris Biandy on the track.
Strike it up! Amen!
Chris Biandy on the track.
extraordinary steel panis, panman on duty, Earl Lapierre Jr.
Ani, bonjour. Sarah Rockandishnakas. Shebananing and Donjaba, Takaranto and Dai. Takaranto, a Mohawk word. The place in the water where the trees are standing. The place where the fish weirs are. My dog and I spend a lot of time walking. It's my favorite way to move through this city. For me, it's a meditative action that isn't about negotiating bike lanes or public transit, but a time to slow down and really try to see the world around me. Concrete sidewalks, parking lots, now covering the rivers and trails that once flowed freely. The Petun, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabeg, the Métis, the Mississaugas all made their homes here, and many other nations expanding beyond these groups traveled through for commerce and trade for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. I think of the other First Peoples' languages and the names they had for this place. I think of the ancient trails covered by the pressures of settlement. The waterways and the moderate climate of the Great Lakes made it a perfect place to fish, hunt, grow food, gather medicines and seeds for horticultural development. Rich, fertile, and abundant, Turtle Island's Mesopotamia. Many First Peoples and their goods traveled from here all the way to the Mississippi and back. Whenever I travel somewhere new, I try to find out whose land I'm on, and I ask, who are the original occupants here? So for Indigenous peoples, land acknowledgements are not only to assert our sovereignty and treaty rights of today, but it's also a way for all peoples to feel more connected to a place. Davenport might be a street now, one I walk down regularly in my neighborhood, but it's not just another thoroughfare. For me, it's an ancient portage trail that holds Indigenous knowledge. They say the animals made the first trails that led them to water, and the people followed. I imagine the deer and the moose once made this trail, followed by the people carrying their birch bark canoes, carrying their goods to trade, and bringing stories to tell. Nations from all over Turtle Island met and traveled through this land. Many languages were spoken. Alliances and decisions were made. People from different nations met and intermarried. The dish with one spoon treaty was made. Takaranto was a meeting place and land made up of sophisticated and cosmopolitan peoples and cultures that I see reflected in the city today. I wonder, is it something in the land and the water? Land acknowledgements might seem like a small and simple gesture, but like many of our ways, they are intended to have more impact and hold more meaning than the words alone. If we pride ourselves on diversity and equality, shouldn't our story include Indigenous peoples? In this era of reconciliation, we need to share the truth first. And reimagine the narrative of this land and this city together.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us, facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with a steady beat have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a place that with tears have been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered, out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, God who has brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might lead us into the light, keep us forever in the path, we pray. Lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we meet thee, lest our hearts, drunk with the wine of the world, we forget thee, shadowed beneath thy hand, may we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land.
What a performance that was. Welcome everyone. Welcome to Black History Month celebrations organized by the Toronto Racially Visible Members Committee of the Public Service Alliance of Canada. Wow, it's so great to see so many of you here, and I'm very excited the lineup of speakers and performers that we have to celebrate Black History Month. Let me get right into it. And my name is Nicholas Thompson, and I'm the chairperson of the Racially Visible Committee. And I will be hosting tonight's celebration. I hope you've enjoyed the pre-show with Earl Lapierre, the extraordinary pan man on duty. And wow, what a beautiful rendition of Lift Every Voice and Sing, better known as the Black National Anthem, from Keziah Amador Let me tell you a little bit about Keziah. She is a 15-year-old singer and songwriter. She's a member of SOCAN and BMI. She's a competitive dancer. She's a visual artist. She's an athlete. She's an actress. And she even has her own e-commerce girl boss line, girl boss collection. Her first single, Girl Boss, was released last year with a music video. She just released another single actually last month called Grateful. And she was on the hit television series Standing Ovation, featured on Afro Global. Did I mention that she's only 15? I'm so proud of this young lady and all of her accomplishments. And she's also a daughter of one of our members. So thank you so much, Keziah, for performing for us today. We really appreciate having you. So we are here to celebrate the many achievements and the contributions of Black Canadians and our communities who have done so much to make Canada the culturally diverse and compassionate and prosperous nation it is. But let's talk a little bit, in my opening remarks, I want to talk a little bit about the labor movement and our contribution to the labor movement. And it's no secret within the labor movement that Black members are highly underrepresented in the leadership and even face discrimination, racism, microaggressions. Sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it's overt. First, in order to address these things, there must be a strong will to act. Elected Black leaders should not have to work 10 times harder than their non-Black counterparts just to show they are good enough. At executive councils and committees, it must be a safe space for Black members or leaders to speak. We must always be accepted for who we are, Black and proud. Our rich culture must not be excluded or asked to turn it down just a little bit. Just turn it down a little bit, Nicholas. Non-Black leaders must educate themselves on anti-Black racism and discrimination and not just say nice things, but their actions must reflect this. I say non-Black because Black people also face discrimination from other racialized groups. And allyship it's not an identity, it's a lifelong process of building relationships based on trust, consistency, accountability with Black members. And inclusion, equity, and diversity bring with them many intersecting challenges. So be willing to listen and learn. Help open up space. I'll repeat that one. Help open up space. It's important to use your own privilege to assist in efforts towards equity. There will be times when you as an ally would have to stand back from the leadership positions that you were afforded. And we know that union democracy, the union is based on a democracy, so we have elections. So open up a leadership program for Black members to gain the tools and knowledge to help Black members get elected. Use your voice and speak up for equity positions. For appointed positions, make equity a requirement and have Black as a separate category so that Black representation is not left behind again due to being bundled in with other racialized groups. Authorized bodies can propose resolutions at convention to enact these policies, which will then make our union stronger and more representative. It's the same type of representation that we're seeking within the public service. And I must mention this because I think it's important. The Public Service of Alliance of Canada is supporting thousands of Black workers in the fight for justice as it pertains to systemic discrimination. My dream is for any Black worker to be able to join the Public Service of Canada at any level and go as high as their ability can take them. My dream is for any Black member to get elected at any leadership level based on their abilities. My dream is for a representative workforce and a representative union. So, I think it's really, really important that we highlight, those changes within labor and the support that Black workers are finally starting to get. So thank you for giving me your time to share those opening remarks. The next speaker does not need an introduction, but since I am calling the shots tonight, I am proud to bring on the first Black PSAC Regional Executive Vice President for the Ontario region, Craig Reynolds. Craig has served the union in so many positions. He was chair of this very own committee. I'm very proud of that. He was chair of the Racially Visible Committee, and he was the Assistant Regional Vice President for the Union of National Employees, as well as the local president for his union. Please welcome Craig Reynolds.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And thanks to the Toronto Racially Visible Members Committee for hosting this event. This committee, as Nicholas mentioned, is very near and dear to me, as I've spent a large part of my active life union role being a part of this committee. Thank you guys, thank you so very much. We're here today to commemorate Black History Month. This is a time when we acknowledge and celebrate the achievements and contribution of Black people within Canada. But this year feels a little bit different, doesn't it? For the first time, it finally feels like the world is paying attention and speaking about the unjust treatment and systemic racism of Blacks, Indigenous, and people of color. With social media playing such a major part in everyone's lives right now, the world is forced to witness the brutal violence and murders our communities face daily. But we all know this has been happening for a long time now. But the cell phones and cameras are shining light on all the things that were once hidden. The world is finally seeing the great amount of trauma this has caused on many of us. But I am proud that our communities have taken this pain and hurt and channeled them into real action. This pandemic has not only taught us the importance of staying connected, but also illustrated the injustices of our economic, political, and judicial systems. But we know that racism is intertwined with multiple facets of our identities. This is why we have to view racism with an intersectional lens. Well, what does that mean? It means we have to look at the different cross-sections where race is compounded by class, gender, sexual orientation, and ability. We cannot continue with the status quo. This pandemic has illustrated that our governments can act quickly and make resources available when they want to. Now is the time to pressure our political representatives and secure commitments to ensure COVID-19 recovery efforts include measures to end anti-Black racism, anti-Indigenous racism, and address the mental health challenges brought on by COVID-19. I hope we're here today to listen and learn and to try and make our union stronger and more equitable. So thank you. But before I go tonight, I would like to introduce you to someone who is very familiar with our region. Sharon D'Souza has been PSAC's National Executive Vice President since September 2020. She was elected PSAC's alternate NEVP at the 2018 National Convention. Born in Karachi, Pakistan, Sharon came to Canada at the age of 5, and she holds a Bachelor of Arts from Ontario College of Arts and Design. She became the first racialized Regional Executive Vice President for Ontario in 2011, and she was re-elected REVP Ontario in 2014 and 2017. Sharon is a passionate and experienced leader within the labor movement with a strong focus on grassroots activism and political action. Thank you for joining us, Sharon.
Thank you very much, Craig. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be with you today. It's hard to believe, as one of the founding members of this committee, I cannot express to you how much it warms my heart. First, I should start by saying Happy Black History Month. I would have loved to see each and every one of you in person to celebrate and recognize Black History Month, but the pandemic has meant that we've had to adapt to working in different ways, but also celebrating in different ways. We can all remember the tragic death of George Floyd, not only in the United States, but the whole world was shaken. Our members and our staff were deeply impacted. Anti-Black racism is not a new phenomenon, but George Floyd's death seemed to awaken many around the world. Protests were being held internationally to speak out against hate, to speak out against white supremacy, and to speak out about anti-Black racism. With many having to work from home, social media became the means of connecting with one another even more than before. However, this also provided an opportunity to speak to issues that matter and educate people on the glaring inequities that have existed in our society for centuries. Canada is not absolved from the barriers that have continued to exist and have disproportionately impacted Black communities and perpetuated anti-Black racism. Just last month, we saw a group of courageous former and current Black federal public workers come forward with a class action suit against the federal government. PSAC supports the class action that is seeking damages for the exclusion experienced by Black workers due to systemic discrimination throughout Canada's institutional structures. And this systemic discrimination has resulted in hiring and promotional practices that have created significant barriers for Black workers within all ranks of the public service of Canada. I know that many of our Black members have experienced this, and it must end. The pandemic has exacerbated many of the issues that have affected Black and marginalized communities for centuries. It's been a wake-up call for many that access to adequate health care, social, political, and economic stability is not a reality for Black communities, and we must do more. These are some of the issues that were also recently discussed at the National Human Rights Committee that was held virtually at the beginning of the year. Black History Month is a time for us to celebrate the massive gains made by Black Canadians in helping shape the Canada we know today. It is also a time for us to think, to act, and to organize against anti-Black racism. Black people and people of Caribbean and African heritage have a unique history and experience in Canada that is often ignored or seen through a colonizer's lens. We must be united in breaking down the systemic barriers that prevent Black Canadians from accessing the same opportunities as others. We must recognize when we are active in upholding systemic barriers, and we must also recognize when we are being complacent. We must also always think and reflect on the ways in which we can do better and how we can step aside and make space for Black voices. I encourage all Black men and women to seek out leadership positions in your community and in your union. To create meaningful change, we must accept the inequities, the fact that they do exist, and that we must do the work to dismantle the structures that have upheld these inequities for centuries. The present and the future will remain unchanged unless we acknowledge and celebrate the contributions of Black Canadians to society. Black history is Canada's history. Black workers matter, Black lives matter. And once again, happy Black History Month. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce Chris Aylward, who is our National President of the Public Service Alliance of Canada, who was elected at the 18th National Triennial Convention in May 2018. And just to let you know, he previously served as the National Executive Vice President from 2012 to 2018. So Chris made it very clear that he wanted a very short introduction, but I just want to say this is our national president, and Chris, I know you have words of wisdom to impart to everyone.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Okay, I'll try that again. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. Thank you, Sharon, and good evening, everyone. And thank you very much for allowing me to join in truly what is a celebration, of course, this evening. Black History Month is a time to reflect, to honor, and to celebrate, really. What I'm going to do this evening is go through some of the highlights, basically what the Public Service Alliance of Canada is really doing to address anti-Black racism. And I want to start off with something that both Nicholas and Sharon touched on a little bit, is that the PSAC is supporting a class action suit filed in the federal court on behalf of former and current Black federal public service employees dating back to 1970. These are Black employees who've been subject to systemic injustice, racial profiling, and some employees who experienced the practice of Black employee exclusion. Black employee exclusion is understood to result in hiring and promotion practices that present barriers for Black employees, regardless of position and rank. The plaintiffs are claiming a breach of fiduciary duty, charter breaches, and damages in the amount of $9 million. And the majority of plaintiffs are current or former PSAC members, and PSAC intends to file for intervenor status on that case as well. And there are other unions and labor organizations that support the claim as well, and they include PIPS, CAPE, AJC, the Federal Black Employees Caucus, and the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists. Another thing that PSAC is doing is that we just recently provided a detailed presentation and written submissions to Treasury Board and the Public Service Commission on staffing barriers for equity groups. As previously noted, there is a practice of excluding Black employees from staffing opportunities in the federal public service. The PSAC listened to our members, and we heard that Black, racialized, and Indigenous workers face racial discrimination at every step of Treasury Board staffing processes. And a few of these issues we highlighted in our submissions include the use of unadvertised positions, essentially permitting hiring managers to hire their preferred candidates absent the need to provide justifications. These preferred candidates frequently exclude Black, racialized, and Indigenous workers. The use of discriminatory competition process to either screen out or fail candidates who were not deemed to be the best fit or suitable for a position. This reasoning was provided even for those employees currently in the job and succeeding, or candidates who were more qualified to do so, and the lack of meaningful recourse to challenge discriminatory and biased staffing. In addition to staffing-related discrimination, the PSAC is also closely monitoring the government's review of the Employment Equity Act. This review was promised by the federal government late last year in the budget update. The current Employment Equity Act includes outdated terminology and is lacking the appropriate data collection of the various designated equity groups. The PSAC is advocating for additional disaggregated data, especially among the racialized groups. It is important to closely analyze how different subgroups like Black workers, have been impacted by staffing and other workplace processes. Another thing, the PSAC is also raising awareness of systemic anti-Black racism through education and panel discussions. In light of George Floyd's death and other examples of systemic anti-Black violence, the PSAC held a panel last June to examine different forms of anti-Black racism. This February, for Black History Month, the PSAC is hosting two different panels. The first panel, scheduled for February 11th, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, addresses the question of workplace racism and Black workers. And then on February the 22nd, from 7 to 8:30, there will be a panel discussion examining the contributions and challenges facing Black labor activists. The fight against systemic anti-Black racism is certainly not limited to the month of February. The PSAC is committed to championing Black history, Black activists, and Black leadership throughout the year. The PSAC must make concrete actions to not only raise awareness of anti-Black racism, but also to take active steps to eliminate systemic barriers. As union leaders, steps have already been taken at the PSAC to address barriers and internal systemic racism. The PSAC National Board of Directors has participated in ongoing mandatory anti-Black racism training. In addition, discussions regarding systemic anti-Black racism continues, and PSAC leaders are examining actions that will address racism within the various union structures. This action plan will examine the various components of the PSAC's work, such as bargaining, representation, and education, to ensure that the processes are free, are barrier-free. And we have to make sure that we continue to do this work. I want to conclude my remarks this evening to talk about a co-founder of the PSAC. And those of you who might not know this, those of you who may be new to PSAC, one of the founders of the PSAC was Calbert Best, or better known as Cal Best, a Black activist born in Nova Scotia in 1926. Brother Best was born into a segregated Canada. As a boy, he and his mother were fined when they refused to leave the whites-only section of their local theater in New Glasgow, Nova Scotia. And then in 1945, he and his mother, Carrie Best, founded the first African-Canadian newspaper, The Clarion. When he began working for the Department of Labor in the Federal Public Service in the 1950s, the government, which oversaw bargaining in federally regulated industries such as railway and air travel, did not allow its own employees to form unions or bargain their working conditions. Brother Best set out to change all that. In 1958, he was elected president of the newly formed Civil Service Association of Canada. He then went on to play a key role in the merger in 1966 of that union and the Civil Service Federation, which then led to what we know today as the Public Service Alliance of Canada. Today, hundreds and thousands of federal public service workers would not be able to organize without Cal Best's efforts. So again, thank you very much for having me this evening, and happy Black History Month. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Brother Aylward, for those remarks. I just want to make sure that everyone could hear me. I'm seeing a little bit of, if you could hear me, if you could just type something in the chat box there, but
You're good to go, Nicholas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so we're going to move on. We're going to have a little bit of entertainment now. We're going to bring on Kwabena and the African Drummers Collective. The African Drummers Collective is a group of African Canadian drummers with a deep appreciation for West Africa rhythms. The members come together regularly to study, practice, and perform in a number of shows in a variety of private and the public settings across the Greater Toronto Area. And in 2017, the group received the award of Top Afro-Carib Drumming Group from the Caribbean Music Awards. Please welcome the African drummers.
Can you folks see me out there? Oh, there we go. Yes. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I'm glad to be a part of this very wonderful session. It's just such an informative session so far, hearing how far the best family going to organized labor. That's amazing. And thank you for that land acknowledgement. I haven't seen one so far, so detailed and different and meaningful. So that was really good. My name is Kwabena and I have Temba over here. We are the African Drummers Collective. And, I just want to tell you about the drums. So these are the dunes and this is the djembe. Drums have been part of our culture for thousands of years, generations. And it's part of the fabric of African culture. Everything that we do of significance, we use the drum, whether it's joy, sadness, or just notification. The drum is part of that. So we're very happy to play a few pieces for you tonight. All right. So we're gonna give you two other pieces. We're just gonna run them right into each other. Those are a version of some Malenke rhythms from West Africa. And one is Soli, a version of Soli, and the other one is Soliba. Okay, so we'll go right into it. So that was solely, and I said we were going to run right into it. But you know, this being the pandemic that we're living through this very crazy time, I cannot help but think that a lot of you folks out there, I don't know, may not be getting the amount of physical activities that you usually get. So I'm going to invite you to move away the chairs in your living room, wherever you are watching this. You know, take off your shoes. And for this last piece, you know, just start moving your body and, you know, get some of that, get that energy flowing. All right. Yeah, get the circulation going. You know what they say about the body? If you don't use it, you will lose it. All right, that's your health tip. So let's go right into Saliba. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that piece. I hope you feel invigorated to get through the rest of the evening and to be ready for Elder Jean Augustine. Have a good night.
Wow, thank you so much for that performance, the African Drummers Collective. If you don't use it, you will lose it. So I was certainly using it and, you know, doing my little thing. And what a great performance. I really enjoyed the Soliba. Thank you very much, Kwabena and the African Drummers Collective for that performance. I'm going to Our keynote speaker will be coming up. We just have one more performance from Randall Adjai. He's an entrepreneur, speaker, and powerful spoken word practitioner who uses his gifts to empower through edutainment. He's the founder of one of Toronto's largest youth-led initiatives, Reaching Intelligent Souls Everywhere, Rise Edutainment. It's such a pleasure to introduce Randall. I've heard him speak at many events, and without further ado, Randall, over to you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for having me here today. And I think it's important that we take the time to honor and celebrate our ancestors as well. So I won't take too much time. I'm excited to hear from the Honorable Jean Augustine, but I just have some words about resilience and something that I've learned in my life that I hope we can carry on, that I think of with my ancestors specifically. I think about the fact that we often look to our ancestors in terms of what they've done for us to be here right now, how our ancestors have cultivated and have overcome some of the most atrocious circumstances in order for us to be here at this point in time. I'm actually joining you all from Ghana right now. I'm in West Africa, Ghana, West Africa. Had the opportunity to go to a slave castle and just like learning more about the history. And so I just want to speak to the resilience of our people, the resilience of what we have as folks. But lastly, as we look to our ancestors in terms of what they've done, I just want to encourage us all to remember that through their legacy, that one day we too are going to be someone's ancestors. And that every day that we live is an opportunity for us to cultivate and create a path and opportunities for them that will make it a little bit easier. And so I want to start off with, I'm doing 3 poems in one. Hope you enjoy. And if you're at home and you like what you hear, typically in the poetry community, we snap. So that's something you can do as well too. But here we go. This colloquial tongue I speak is foreign to my ancestors who once spoke me into existence. I am a descendant of a bloodline that was scattered across the ocean. This once foreign tongue used to oppress me. It is this stolen tongue I now use to speak of my oppression. A language used to abuse and defy my nature. A system designed to wipe out my ancestral imprints with ignorance. A tool misused to propel the exploitations inflicted upon me. Used to divide and conquer. Used in a court of law I was then forced to honor. Laws of a stolen land are now used to govern stolen people, displaced on native soil. The English language is oppressive in its very nature. It thrives on individualism and domination. But these words do not exist in my mother tongue. I come from a land that speaks in hollow drums and heartbeats, resurrected by redemption songs of love and prophesied descendants. See, the English language may have colonized the borders of my tongue, but Mama Africa still lives in each breath of my lungs. Because if the ocean waves could speak, would they still remember stories of our ancestry? Do the ripple effects of colonialism still linger across the Atlantic? Have the ancestors who were once swallowed whole by its gaping mouth become one with the sea? Did the oceans make us mermaids in Atlantis? Does each tide wade like long lost memories? Do the shores remember the ebb and flow of dark and shackled feet? Do the shores still recognize us as kings and queens? Do the waters continue to baptize and save us in the name of colonialism? Because I know too many broken people broke into pieces they think they cannot fix. And like shattered glass, they may cut you when you try to uplift, slice the helping hands, hoping to heal the harm that's happened to them. They often hurt in silence, but smile in your face today, but tomorrow you may hear of how their brokenness has escalated into acts of violence. We often judge these broken people and then call them names, label them, sometimes forgetting that like flipping a coin, they too can change. But what does it really mean to be broken when it is broken people that have helped mend the world? I realize that in our brokenness is when our true lives unfurl. Because see, brokenness is a sign of recreation, a sign of growth. But we fear brokenness because we fear the unknown and uncertainty. But brokenness can piece our wholes together perfectly, sometimes permanently. After all, if you've never known brokenness, then how would you know when you're a whole? If you've never been broken, then how would you measure your growth? Because I often question if a coffin is where my legacy is destined. A rigor mortis reflection of me Buried 6 feet deep in the six, my legacy, my soul, awaiting the arrival of 12 disciples, and no remnants of me, no fruits of labor left from my seeds, not leaving this world better than when I came in. My name forgotten, not even whispered upon the lips of those my actions impacted. It's scary. I heard once that the worst thing that can happen to us when we are no longer here is not death itself. It is to be forgotten. And I cringe at the thought of my efforts lost in coffins, boxed in the same confines that caused me problems, my life, my beliefs, encrypted in tombstone, indicating the dates to and from. But I hope the dash in between represents more than just the good work I've done. My life blowing in the wind like the breath that has left my lungs, only to leave this world unfulfilled, with holes in the potential that I was given. And respin in the same cycle to my children. See, when your time comes and your soul is sent, what will the dash on your tombstone represent? Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate your time and your efforts. I just wanted to wrap it up with this, and poetry has been a very powerful tool for me to really express myself. And one thing I've learned about life, and when we think about our ancestors, is that ultimately there's two things in life that are guaranteed. You know, we will be born and one day we will no longer be here. But one thing that connects us all, one thing that it does not discriminate is adversity and challenge. You know, adversity does not care about how good you are. It doesn't care about how much money you have in your pocket. Adversity doesn't care the color of your skin. Adversity and challenge is something that just is what it is. We're all going to experience it at some form, at some time in our lives. But the beautiful thing about adversity is that we have the opportunity to learn and grow through adversity. And lastly, when you think of a seed, and this is kind of in relation to resilience and also the pandemic. So no matter where you are, I hope this last message really lands with you. So when we think of the seed, a seed has a potential to turn into anything. It can turn into an acorn tree, it can turn into an apricot tree, an apple tree, banana tree, whatever. You know, a seed can turn into anything. It can even transform into a forest. And so we often take a seed, which has a potential to turn into anything, and then we put those seeds inside of the darkness of the soil. And we take that seed and put it into the darkness of the soil, it has to crack, it kind of has to break, because all the potential that is inside of it has to find a way to root itself into the darkness that it is placed in. And only when it is broken and roots itself in the very darkness can it break through the ground and reach for the light. And so the seed is us. We are the seeds. We are the seeds full of potential to create whatever it is that we are able to do. And I think what is very important for us to recognize is sometimes we too have to be put into the darkness. And in the darkness, only then after we break can we root ourselves and truly find our light. Thank you all so much for having me. I love the work that you are doing, and I continue to support in whatever way I can. But thank you. My name is Randall J, and you can find me on my website at randallaj.com. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Randall. We do really appreciate you coming on. And he said something impactful, really impactful to me. One day, we too will be ancestors. So we really have to take that opportunity today to leave a positive legacy for those to come. Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, comrades, the time is here. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine. I'm sure by the time I'm finished reading out her accomplishments and legacy, she probably wouldn't have to say anything tonight. Dr. Jean Augustine made history as the first Black woman to be elected to Canada's Parliament and served from 1993 to 2006. In 1995, Dr. Augustine tabled the historic motion calling for February to be Black History Month. The motion received unanimous support. And as we say, the rest is history. Her tenure included distinguished service as Parliamentary Secretary to the Prime Minister, Minister of State for Multiculturalism and the Status of Women, Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee and Deputy Speaker of the Parliament of Canada. Her legislative successes included the Black History Month motion and the groundbreaking Famous Five motion, which authorized the first and still the only statues on Parliament Hill depicting women other than Queen Elizabeth. From 2007 to 2015, She served as Ontario's first ever Fairness Commissioner. In 2008, the Jean Augustine Chair in Education, Community and Diaspora was launched at York University to help advance education, equity, and inclusiveness. Also in her name are the Girls' Leadership Academy in Scarborough, a center for young women's empowerment, and a municipal park in Etobicoke, a secondary school in Brampton, and a multi-purpose complex and district park in Vaughan. A member of the Order of Canada and commander of the Order of the British Empire, Dr. Jean Augustine holds honorary doctorates from the universities of McGill, Toronto, York, Windsor, Waterloo, Guelph, Trent, and supports scholarships at Centennial College, George Brown, Humber College. Last month, as of recently, Dr. Augustine was named as Maclean's Lifetime Award recipient. Dr. Augustine, welcome, welcome, welcome. Can we have a virtual round of applause for our very own Dr. Jean Augustine? We just had a little spat at the CRA about which oil down is better, and she contended that Grenada is better, and I have to disagree that, but Trinidad's oil down is, welcome, Dr. Augustine. Over to you. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. And you didn't have to read everything from my bio. You could just say, here she is. I am so very pleased to join you in this Black History Month event. I am also pleased to greet Mr. Aylward, Mr. Reynolds, and Ms. D'Souza. Sharon, I think we've met before, and I'm very pleased to see you again. We are in challenging times, and as racially visible members meeting here to converse, to enjoy, to speak, to celebrate, and to recognize that this is the 25th anniversary of Black History Month in Canada. It was 1995. It was the time when the parties in the House and the ideologies in the House of Commons were different than it is today. It took nerve to introduce and to talk about issues as they pertain to African Canadian people, to draw attention to the fact that in our textbooks, in our conversations, that people of, well, we can say this about our Indigenous, Métis, Inuit people, were not included in the textbooks, in the history, the social studies, and those things that boys and girls or students were learning through the education system. Putting together a motion, wanting unanimous consent, not wanting debate, meant that the motion had to be streamlined to what is called just the facts, just the facts. And what were the facts? The facts were, and I'll read it to you, very, very brief motion, because these are the facts, that this House take note of the contribution, the important contribution of Black Canadians to the settlement, to the growth, to the development of Canada. The diversity of the Black community in Canada. The importance of the history of African Canadians to this country. And then I call on the colleagues to recognize and designate February as Black History Month in Canada. And I keep saying, as I read the motion, I keep repeating in Canada, because it seems to me that we know so much more about Black Americans, and somehow we omit because they're not presented to us in the same way. Black Canadians are neglected, and that history is neglected, and oftentimes their contribution is not recognized. And so the motion called on all the members in the House who were there at the time. I was seeking unanimous consent, and I wanted all of them to say yes. It went to the point. There was nothing there that they could debate. The debate really was, as I went from person to person, asking them to support my motion. And, you know, there were some cheeky things that were said. You know, you want February, who's going to come for March? Well, so you want Black History Month? When are we going to get White History Month? And, you know, those are things that I'm sure you are aware of, these things said in jest, but at the same time, very painful. And the responses have to be such that I wanted unanimous consent. I wanted their support. And so mine was also an answer in jest. So December 1995, the motion was given unanimous consent. February 1996 was our first celebration. Materials were brought out from the Library of Parliament that I did not even know existed in the Library of Parliament about early ancestry, parts of settlement, maps, different things that occurred in the early days, the early 16th, 17th, 18th century. And as these things were brought forward, we recognized with a reception that we were indeed celebrating the history of African Canadians. Little did I know that the celebration 25 years later would be the way it is today. We're celebrating Black History Month all across our country, from coast to coast, with our Indigenous peoples. I was on a virtual with the Iqaluit, with the Nunavut Black History Society. And the celebrations there, again, going not only that evening I was on with them a week ago, but throughout the month. The point I'm underscoring here is that Black history, it's not just history for Black people, neither is it history just for people of African descent. Black history is Canadian history. It's all of our history. It's the history that speaks to who we are in Canadian society. And it goes back way before Confederation. The first recorded Black man to have set foot in Canada was a free man, a navigator, a professional on the ship with Champlain in 1603. And he knew the Mi'kmaq language, and he spoke the Mi'kmaq language because he was able to go to the Mi'kmaq people and made clearance for Champlain and the expedition to land. Historians tell us that if he knew Mi'kmaq in 1603, then he must have touched the shores of Canada before that time. Because as I said to someone who's Mi'kmaq background, I said, I don't know that there were lots of Mi'kmaq running around the ports in Europe. So for my ancestor to know Mi'kmaq, he must have been to the shores of Canada earlier. We know of a young boy, 9-year-old, that was baptized in Montreal, around 1609 or there around. We know the stories, the history of slavery on Canadian soil. We know also that the United Empire loyalists and others, political people, people in high places, as it were, owned the slaves and had slaves. And so the story of African Canadians, Canadians who have been, as I said in the motion, the diversity of the Black Canadians. We have Black Canadians who've been here since that time, 1600s, 1700s, in the 18s, 8 and 9 generations. And then there are the newcomers, like myself and others, who are the immigrants and who were welcomed to this land by our indigenous peoples. The history is vast. The history is interesting. The history is painful. The history, and as Brother Randall said, the history shows the resilience of African Canadians. Even when they were given land, the land, promised land, when they were given that promised land, it was unworkable. We know the situation of what went on in Hogan's Alley, what happens in Africville and places around, the difficulties that some of the ancestors and the earlier people experienced. I was very pleased to hear Mr. Hillard talk about Carl Best, because I knew his mother and was on several advocacy and activist activities with his mom, Carrie Best. I remember bringing her up to Parliament Hill when I was there. And when we got to the door and, you know, the security, sometimes she was walking ahead of me and security would ask, and how offended she was that they would ask who she was, because the world knew Carrie Best and recognized Carrie Best, and she didn't have to show any documents to say, I am Carrie Best. And then I came right up because as a member, you can bring in your guest. She was feisty. She was a very strong African voice. And she tackled the system way before Viola Desmond. And she was the one who kept Viola Desmond's story alive through her newspaper. And her son had his mother's feistiness, his mother's determination to make the society better, to work to make the society better. And I must congratulate you, Nicholas Thompson and Nicole, and all those of you who are engaged in Local 48, because we all have to take leadership roles. We all have to push the agenda. We all must be activists and advocates. And unions have a long, long history. I don't have to tell you that unions have always made it better, not only for their membership, but they've made things better in the workplace. They've made things better economically. They've made nations strong. And so you are in an endeavor as members, as visible minority members, to help to make those changes that are so essential. And I speak all the time about, when I speak about my endeavors, my life, my whatever, I talk about something called the SAIL principles, S-A-I-L. And I think that's what you are all about as leaders, as leadership, racially visible members. You are practicing the SAIL principles. And the SAIL principles, the S is for service. You are providing service not only to yourself, not only for those in your immediate shops, but you're providing service for the entire country because you help to make a difference. You push the agenda forward as you do this service. Activism is part of what you do. And oftentimes this could be very jarring on those when you try to use activist way of bringing things to the fore. I started life as an activist when I came to Canada because I keep talking about the early 60s when we had no Charter of Rights and Freedom, when we had no human rights code. The Charter of Rights and Freedom, as you know, did not come until we repatriated our Constitution and we amended it. And the section that I hold really dear is that section 15 that says you can discriminate on the basis of. The Ontario Human Rights Code didn't come until 1962. Dr. Dan Hill, Lawrence Hill's dad, was the first commissioner. We didn't have Landlord and Tenant Act. And so, a landlord could say it's for rent. As I was told, it's for rent, but not to you. We did not have employment equity and rules around what could be done and what should be done in settings, in businesses, in corporate bodies, so that they could deny you because they felt you're not a good fit for our organization. We know now that we have series of laws and policies and directions. In Canada, we have it all on the books. We have it on the books. What is important for us is to really, the next part of the service activism is really the initiatives that we all must take to ensure that what is on the books are in reality, that we make things happen because we have legislation, policy directions, etc., that help us to call out what is important for us, what is important for us to do. And the L in that sail is leadership. And that's what you are providing by being a visible minority committee. You are providing leadership. You're saying, I am willing to get to the front, to stand with others, to support what's happening, to ensure that we initiate, to ensure that we're activists around these issues, and that we provide service to our membership. And so looking at what is needed right now, and I will not repeat what Craig Reynolds talked about, although this was part, Craig, you took my lines away. I was going to talk about the pandemic and what the pandemic has done in terms of opening up and showing us all the gaps that there are in the systems. Who are the essential workers? Who are the doctors and the scientists who come to explain things to us on a daily basis? Who are they? Look at the faces, listen to the accents, know that we are all contributors, and we should be, as a country, be grateful, be respectful, and notice the diversity in our population. The issue around George Floyd that has somehow captured the world. That vicious killing so openly done showed us all the injustices, opened up all the injustices, and has cried out and is crying out for us to address questions around systemic discrimination, things that are built into the system, ways in which we've been operating. And we have a way of saying, we've always done it this way. It has always been this way. How can we make this, it has always happened this way? And how can we move from that to acknowledging that every voice is a voice of worth, that everyone has a place at the table, that we need to look at our promotional opportunities. We have to look at our procedures. We have to open up for new people. And I tell you, unions have been in the forefront of that discussion. It was the union that first of all put out very boldly pamphlets and other things about racism and racism in the workplace, and made it comfortable for other businesses to follow. So you can be leaders, you can be in the forefront, but you have to start right at home with yourselves, with your workplace, and with those around you. How do we make place for others? How do we look at our boardroom? And companies are talking about this right now. We need to have people, all the different voices around. Better decisions are made when everyone is included. The business line, or the bottom line, I should say, is better when there is inclusion, when diversity is part of the way of the workplace. It is important that we all recognize what we need to do, how we need to work with each other, how we need to include each other. And I can tell you, looking at my own workplace and my own life situation, there were people who were very, very friendly at work. You had coffee with them, you went to their desk, they came to your desk, but then you're not invited to the soirees at their house, the birthday parties, because they really don't want other people to see that they have a Black friend. This is changing now. And it's changing now because we are conscious. We're conscious of what needs to be done. We have policies and procedures that are cemented in our workplace. We have the consciousness raised all around the world of injustices. And we recognize that there are things that are embedded in a number of the rules and procedures that we follow. And so your job as union is really to stand up, to ensure that everyone is secure in the workplace. But you yourself, they say charity starts at home. You have to look at your own shop, your own friendship group. And right now, the thing is all about allies. Who are the allies? Who is making room for you? Who is looking at the whatever and saying, hey, this committee is missing this voice, that voice. We have studies, academic studies, that have shown that when there are different and many voices around the table that come from various and varying perspectives, that the discussion is richer, that better decisions are made, and that you have a company where everyone sees that there are opportunities to reach their full potential. And so as you celebrate Black History Month, 25th anniversary, 25 years since this was passed, 25 years of celebrating. And it's not just celebrating and congratulating. It's also a reflective time brought courtesy the pandemic, but it's also a time when we do what I call the Sankofa moment. The Sankofa is a bird whose neck is always going to the back, and then taking what from the back, bringing it to the front, scrutinizing it, and then making the decision where it's going to go. And I think that this is what Black History Month does. It gives us the opportunity to say, where have we been? What is happening? What have we learned? Bring it to the front. And what is happening today? What are some of the winds that are blowing? What are some of the decisions we're making? What things are making headlines? Who in our organization are allies? What do we need to do? And then the decision in the present to lead us forward like the Sankofa, pointing to where we need to go. And so I want to congratulate you. I want to say how pleased I am to be able to say these few words of encouragement. I left the Parliament of Canada. I was a Fairness Commissioner, and my job at the Fairness Commission was really a difficult one because it was the very first piece of legislation ever that spoke to the fact that if you were educated in another jurisdiction and you came to Canada, that you should be given an opportunity, that the regulatory bodies, the bodies that regulate the professions, should have policies that are fair, that are open, that answers should be given to you in a timely fashion. And so that work has been very instructive for me. I am now encouraging and working with young girls from the age of 7 to 17. And the general idea is to help them to develop their leadership skills, homework help, self-defense, nutritional classes, entrepreneurial activities, leadership activities, developing their self-esteem. So there are over 200 girls who come to the Jean Augustine Center in Etobicoke, and we work with them. We've been doing this virtually now since the pandemic, but we're hoping that God's willing, when we're on the other side, we'll go back with our face-to-face. When I was Minister for Multiculturalism and the Status of Women, I had some responsibility thrown by Sheila Copps, who was the Minister for Canadian Heritage, who asked me to do some work around chairs at university. When we called around to the chairs and when we brought them together, there was not one chair and one endowed chair in any of the universities in Canada that spoke to community, education, diaspora issues. And so I thought we have to do something about this as a community. So there is the chair at York University. A chair is $3 million. They endowed the $3 million, and the interest from that is taken to do the work of the chair. The chair carries on in perpetuity because the $3 million is not touched once it's endowed, just the interest is taken. So that's where my energy is right now, trying to close off the endowment. So far, I've raised 1.8 million with some community effort, and we're now into the last tranche, trying to find the 1.2 million. And so, Nicholas, if you can come up with the 1 million, I'll be more than pleased to more than pleased to pass this on. But no, on a serious note, this is where we are, and we need all community support, because my sense is that we have to be in every institution, every organization, and every part of Canadian society. So I'm so happy for the opportunity to greet, to celebrate with you, and to be part of this union type activity Racially Visible Members Committee. I watch the work that PSAC is doing around eliminating barriers and you know, the action plan, etc., the way forward. But I keep encouraging and I keep pushing. The activist part in me is saying, let's, as the Jamaicans would say, let's walk the talk. No more surveys, no more reports. We know what needs to be done. So let's all get together in Canadian society and let's make things happen. And I know that as union members, you can make things happen. And it usually starts with you in the workplace. So, merci beaucoup, mes amis.
Thank you very much. Let's walk the talk. Powerful words from Dr. Jean Augustine. No more reports and surveys and you need to find out this and that and all kind of thing. Let's get, it's time to act. Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to hear you speak, Dr. Augustine. I want to open it up for a few questions and we've collected a few here. As a Black woman that has lived in Canada for many years, is there a specific moment you can recall that has shaped your activism and empowered you to do the amazing work that you do in the community? Is there a defining moment?
Well, I'm not too sure there is one defining moment, because when you're an activist or an advocate and you're pushing for some change, when the change happens, that's a defining moment. And there are so many defining moments. So for example, when I came 1966, there were no Black faces reading the news. You turned on the television, which was just coming into everybody's homes. You saw no Black faces there. Actually, even on radio, people had to take courses if they wanted to be on radio so they could get the Canadian pronunciation. So pushing on that, I was very much engaged in this with anti-racist education and making changes in the school system. I did workshops all across the province for school boards and for educators, talking about anti-racist racism in the school, the classroom, the curriculum. I wrote curriculum. When I saw the changes, that's a defining thing, that we made some change. When I pushed with people like Dudley Laws and others to say police should not investigate themselves. And the struggle that went on, the demonstrations and protests week after week after week. And then we had the resolution, there will be a committee to set up, to look into the setup of an SRU. There were so many things, like working with when Roberta Jameson, Aboriginal woman, working on issues to face her community, our community, and we were all able to work together, supporting things like human rights code. Because you know this, governments don't sit back and say, now what can we do for those people? You have to bring to the attention of those in decision makers. And it's not just bringing it to their attention, but pushing, bringing it again, finding the ally, finding the leadership that would say, we need to do this, we need to hear these folks out. And so there are several things, you know, working on the multiculturalism policy, just a whole series of things that have changed society. I've been here 60 years. I'm now 83 years old. And so I've seen some changes. I've seen us march forward with really good changes. And I've seen us slip back simply because the leadership is not there. In Ontario, we had anti-racist department or whatever. We saw that pull back. We had human rights, you know, at one point in time, and, you know, a hardline government comes in, shuts everything down. And this is why we have to continue to do the activism. We have to continue to keep our eyes on the ball, as it were, so that we keep going forward, like the Sankofa, keep going forward and not pushing back.
Thank you very much. We'll take two more questions. The next question, who do you look up to? Who are your mentors and femtors?
I have several femtors, and we talk in the wee hours of the night, and we analyze things that are happening, things that are making headlines. There were several people that I started on the ground with things like METRAC, Action Committee on Violence Against Women, the Congress of Black Women of Canada. We built that as a national organization from coast to coast. And of course, as what happens with most organizations, we make some progress, we see some legislation, the lives of people have changed, and the recruitment of young people to the organization is not what it should be. And I think this is a story for all of us who are out there. We have to make sure that we have that next line, those young people who would come on board. And if you see an organization with all gray hairs, then you know that that organization is going to suffer at some point in time unless we do something to ensure that, that as they would say, young blood comes in to revive and rejuvenate. And then those of us who are in leadership have to make room for young people. Sometimes a voice come in and it's a little bit harsher than than one is used to. But one has to realize that young people come in with the enthusiasm of youth, with new ideas, with new ways of doing things, and we have to make room in organizations for young people and to keep our organizations alive. The role models I've had when I entered the Parliament of Canada, I had no role models there in terms of who went before me and who I can follow or who I can ask about different things. So I just had to have a wide section of people from whom I would take advice, people who have been there, people who've done it before. And at the same time, I have also been, as Brother Ryan, I've also been a very resilient person. So I fall on my behind, I pick myself up, I dust myself off, and I go again. And that has been my steadying over the many years. Always looking, not doing things individually, but always looking for a team, looking for supporters, working with others, supporting others, so in turn they will support me.
Thank you very much. And you've spoken, I see a question posted here by Celia. You've spoken at length about how the history books does not represent Black people, at least not in a good light. What kind of collaboration would be needed to correct the history textbooks used in the public school system to begin with, including Black history? And do you think it's something that needs to be done is the question here. And I know as a former educator, you know, you'd have significant insight on that.
Well, there have been many parents who have been vigilant about that. A number of textbooks have been taken off the curriculum simply because parents point out the destructive nature of the writing, the script, the way in which the characters are shown, and I'm sure we all know those you know, they're taken off the shelf. We now have curriculum departments that are writing and using videos and doing really good work as curriculum writers, modules to suit the age and information for the age and grade level of our children. And so I feel that we're in a right direction. When I was talking earlier, I was mentioning when I was coming up through the system. And I think teachers now are more sensitive, guidance counselors who used to direct young people in the direction of, made judgments about them on the basis of skin color. We know that this is not happening now. And even if it does, parents have recourse to systems within the school board, systems outside the government, human rights challenges, etc. So we see a change now. We see the winds of change are blowing in simply because we recognize the importance of inclusiveness, the respect for each other, what must be done. The other, and that's the heartening part for me, a lot of our young people going to university are taking courses and contributing so that when things are written, they're there, their thesis, the courses that they're studying, the input that they're making will make sure that going forward, we'll have good curriculum with the input of people, BIPOC and other people of color, to ensure that the history is there. We're also showing, and you have the Ontario Heritage Society as an example, that's pointing out places of interest where some of the early settlements and what has happened in different parts of the country. And so we see that history, that archaeological writings or diggings. We see the museum work that is happening, and this awareness of where we are, what we need to do, and the way forward. So I'm very hopeful for the future. I'm very hopeful that my great-grandchildren would have a world where when they pick up a book, they wouldn't see themselves be demeaned in it, but would be more positive.
Thank you very much. And one final question here. When you're feeling frustrated or exhausted by racism, how do you keep going?
Because I don't look at racism as my problem. I see it as a problem of the person who is the racist. And the things in the system that are things that are built into the system that are racist, I feel I have a responsibility to work to ensure that those things are removed, those things are attended to, and ways in which we could address those issues. But the personal things, the individual who would use the N-word at you, or the individual who would really do, the microaggression stuff and all of that. I've never taken that on. I just figure that's their problem. That's their problem. Get over it.
All right, there we go. Thank you very much for answering those questions, Dr. Augustine. And I want to really thank you for joining us. And you mentioned that you were 83 years old. Wow, you look amazing.
That's the Isle of Spice, huh? The nutmeg, the ginger, the spices, the cinnamon, everything. Organic island.
All right, thank you very much once more for joining us, Dr. Augustine. I'm going to, we have one more piece scheduled there for you, and I'm going to get that on there now. So
Hey, what's going on, beautiful people? It's your nephew, your cousin, your boy, Jermaine Cowan. Right away, I just want to say a big shout out to the PSAC family. It's Black History Month. Check this music out. This is just for you guys. This song that I'm going to do for you guys is from one of this Beautiful artist and legendary artist celebrating his birthday this month, Mr. Bob Marley, and the song is called Redemption Song. Old pirate, yes, they rabbi, sold I to the merchant ship. Minute after they took I from the bottomless pit. But my hands, yes, it was made strong by the hands of the Almighty. We forward in this generation triumphantly. Won't you help to sing this a song of freedom? It's all I ever had. Redemption song. Redemption song, yeah. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves, yes, can free our mind. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophet while we stand aside and look? Ooh, some say it's just a part of it, but we got to fulfill the book. Won't you help me sing? This a song of freedom. It's all I ever had. Redemption song. Redemption song. My favorite verse. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Oh, have no fear for atomic energy, 'cause none of them can stop the time. How long shall they kill our prophet while we stand aside and look? Ooh, some say it's just a part of it, but we got to fulfill the book. Won't you help me sing? I can't hear you. This is a song of freedom. It's all I ever had. Redemption song. Redemption song. Yeah.
This one is out of the floor. If you know that the sunshine from fun time so the moon don't glow when you don't know. Hey, if you know that the birds sing was the first thing I heard when I saw you. Life would be this way, then I could be with you, and you will be with me. The melodies to my song, living in harmony, and God will be with us. We would be in love for eternity, eternity, yeah. Something about life, yeah, makes me wanna smile, makes me wanna smile. Hey, tell you something about life, yeah, makes me wanna smile, makes me wanna smile. Hey, if you know that I love everything that's about you, and you know that I just can't live my life without you. If you know that the bird sing was the first thing I heard when I saw you, life wouldn't be this way.
something about life that just makes me want to smile. Thank you very much, Jermaine Cowan, for that performance. This concludes our Black History Month show for the Racially Visible Committee. I want to thank all of our presenters and entertainers, Brother Craig Reynolds, Sharon D'Souza, Chris Aylward, Randall Ajay, the African Drummers Collective, Keziah Amador, Earl Lapierre, Jermaine Cowan, the Racially Visible Members Executive Council. Thank you very much for supporting and putting on this event. My name is Nicholas Thompson, and we're just going to leave you with some good old steel pans. So take this in, and you're free to leave whenever. So thank you very much for joining us, and have yourself a great evening. Enjoy this last piece from us.
Hello, Public Service Alliance of Canada. Happy Black History Month. Yours truly, Earl Lapierre, the extraordinary steel panist, or on all social media platforms, Pan Man on Duty. I am so glad to be here today to demonstrate the beautiful sounds of the steel pan, invented in the Twin Island Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. Any Chinese there? Any Chinese? Any Chinese? Any Chinese? Any Chinese? How you mean? Yes, man. The steel drum is the newest, and I'm saying it again, is the newest musical instrument invented in the world, because there has been no other musical instrument invented after this. And it's been around since the last century, so it's over 100+ years, but there's no other musical instruments. Imagine that, out of the Twin Island of Trinidad and Tobago. So today, not a lot of talking. I'm going to let the music speak for itself. And especially at a time like this song is so fitting. It's called Cheers to Life. And we're just giving thanks for being alive here today, all right? If you woke up this morning, you're a winner. Let's go.
Extraordinary steel panist. Panman on duty. Earl Lapierre Jr. Earl Lapierre Jr.
Thank you.